Hello, welcome to Priory Paddock in winter. Winter in St Bees tends to be characterised by apparently endless succession of Atlantic depressions, bringing wind and rain in off the sea, followed shortly afterwards by another depression bringing more wind and rain off the sea. But every now and again, if we're lucky, an anticyclone will slide south from the Arctic and the weather will change. Not for more than a few days, but for a little while at any rate. The rain is held at bay. We get a chill northeast breeze, but the skies are clear, there's bright sunshine, and we get a hard frost. And that's what's happened today. And I've come down to the paddock to see what it looks like. The first thing that I notice, actually, as I'm coming up to the gate, is that on the gorse bushes at the bottom of the paddock, despite the fact that there is a hard frost and lots of frost on the ground, and a police car going past in the distance. Oh no, it's a fire engine. I hope nobody's seriously hurt anywhere. On the gorse bushes, there are some flowers. No matter how hard the weather, the gorse will always manage to have one or two flowers on it somewhere. Coming in through the gate, the paddock is looking very, very wintry. Despite the low sunshine shining in through the trees, the trees themselves are all bare. There's bare twigs against the sky. The boardwalk is covered in frost, and there's frost on much of the ground as well. Wherever the low sun hasn't caught it, there is still frost to be seen. As the temperature with the usual rainy weather we've been having has been quite mild, relatively speaking, the tussock grasses have still been growing until more or less late November, but now they're looking distinctly drooping, and there's nice hoarfrost crystals, lovely crystals of hoarfrost starring the drooping leaves of the tussocks. I'm coming across the boardwalk, taking care not to slip on the frosty boards which are crunching under my feet. There's some ice in the shallow end of the pond here at the end closest to the boardwalk, down by the gate, and I can see there's definitely ice there, but it very rarely freezes across the whole of the pond. The end at the bottom end is shallow, and it cools down quite quickly. But the bulk of the pond really doesn't freeze unless the weather gets very cold indeed. Coming on further round, the Gunnera, the Brazilian giant rhubarb, as its name implies, doesn't really like cold weather. So when the leaves started to wither at the end of October, we cut them down, and the root stock of the rhubarb was mulched with a couple of barrowfuls of leaves from the trees around the priory, and then the great big leaves of the Gunnera itself were put back on top to cover it up, to make a tent, and it's sitting there now with frost on the top, but hopefully it'll be snug and sound and the frost won't have penetrated in to damage the roots. As I said, there was some ice at the shallow end of the pond, and sometimes when if the frost lasts for a week or so, we might get frost across the whole of the pond itself, and very occasionally quite thick ice on the pond. But the well is spring fed. The water flows into it from on the north side, the upper side, from a spring which is about 2/3 of the way up the whole site and deep underground. It's about 4 feet down under the great stands of codlins and cream. Well, the water, it's very, very rare indeed that the frost would penetrate deep enough to affect that in any way whatever. And so as the water is continually running, the well very, very rarely has any ice on it at all. And if it does, we have to take great care to keep the ice broken, because if it formed a thick sheet across, the expansion of the disc of ice would break the huge stone bowl that is the basin of the well itself. I've set off to walk up the snaky path now, and here, where the low winter sun isn't reaching the ground at all, the frost is actually penetrating into the ground and has raised the surface. So as I walk on it, you might be able to hear it crunching under my feet. As I come round the path here under the trees, I can see a puffed up robin that's looking very, very cold in one bush, and further up the paddock, there's under the trees there's a pair of blackbirds. These are residents, and they have to manage through the winter somehow. The frost has cleared the leaves from the trees. Almost all the leaves are off the trees now, and they're carpeting the ground. The ground under the trees is carpeted with leaves, and in many cases these are coated with frost, which give a lovely pattern on the leaves. Winter is obviously the time when the natural cycle of life here in the paddock reaches its lowest point, shall we say. But nothing is ever static, not even here in the depth of winter, and this can be seen if we look around on some of the trees, the older trees for example. We can see the cones which contain the seeds that the alder produced this year, and on the same twigs next to the cones can be seen clusters of catkins, which are the alder's flowers waiting to open in the coming spring. The hazel bushes are clear of leaves now. The leaves, as I said, are carpeting the ground beneath the hazels, but the hazels are festooned with what will become the lamb's tails. They're the catkins, the male catkins on the hazel bushes are already hanging there, waiting to open the earliest sign of spring. At the top of the site, underneath the larger trees at the top of the site, the ground is a little more open, and here I can see again signs of spring already. The heart-shaped leaves of the celandine flowers are already showing well, and there are green spikes, clusters of dark green spikes showing through the dead leaves and the moss, which are the leaves of the bluebell. And it'll be a few months yet, but eventually life will be quite obvious here again. Well, that's what the paddock is looking like now. it only remains for me to wish you a Merry Christmas and a peaceful and prosperous New Year. I shall be back around Candlemas in early February to see how the wheel has turned and the signs of life are returning to the paddock. Until then, cheerio!